Welcome to our mutual interest. I'm your host, Mina Fombo, but it's your stories that make this show more than a Heising podcast. Spades in the grind, let's go. On today's episode, I'm joined by Joyann Boyce, responsible AI consultant, founder of InClued AI, and the woman who somehow convinced the UN to listen to her talk about puppies. Yes, that's correct, I said puppies and AI bias at the same time. Trust me, it works. Joyann spent years showing global brands, and now all of us, where bias creeps into our tech, our marketing, our data, and even our stock photos. In this episode, we get into AI behaving badly, why algorithms sometimes center the white space quite literally, and how to stay human while the machines, well, they keep predicting things. We also talk about upskilling, ethics, representation, and how we hold on to our human agency in a rapidly changing world. Joyann, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
No problem. Listen, I'm not going to waste any time because we've got so much to talk about. But I just wanted to kind of go in with the idea. So basically, you've just come back from New York, where you're talking at the United Nations about artificial intelligence, so AI and AI bias. And I kind of want to know, how do you get to that space? Because I'm sure it's up there on your list of achievements. It must be a bit of a milestone. And so how do you get from wherever you've come from, whatever your journey is, to speaking at a place where all the world's nations get together and discuss common problems, find solutions, and you're centering your space in artificial intelligence and bias? Because to me, I'm like, wow. So tell us, who are you and how did you get, what's been the journey?
If I was to tell you that it was a stumbling road of decisions, it would probably be the most accurate. But essentially, I am Bristolian, but my background's Trinidadian. I came over when I was 9, and I've just been on a journey of trying to figure stuff out. Like, I come from a family of police officers and nurses and a lot of traditional jobs. And I just knew I didn't want to do any of those things. So I studied psychology in university. Wanting to be a psychologist, did not want to actually go into the NHS. That's a separate conversation. But I then stumbled into the career of marketing and really advised people around marketing, social media marketing, got into the data. It's been a wild road and led me to building softwares because I honestly, when I was telling people around how to make their marketing more inclusive and how to represent people, I felt like I was answering a lot of questions that a robot could answer, but I had no technical background at the time, no knowledge of it. So I did a data science master's during COVID because we all had time during COVID, obviously, and decided to try and build a software to help people understand those questions about how to make their marketing more inclusive. And that's what got me here. I just started talking about puppies, AI, and bias, and somehow stumbled into the UN. Didn't stumble, had security clearance, but yes.
So tell us a little bit about inclusive marketing. Just, that's obviously been one of the jumping blocks to getting to this space. So you said you felt a bit like a robot, but tell us a bit about inclusive marketing and what that looked like then. And I guess, what that looks like now.
So what it looks like then was a lot of marketing agencies thought that if they just did something on Black History Month, International Women's Day, or they just hired someone different, tick, their inclusion is done. But what I was looking at it by the time, and this was probably 2018, 2017, because myself and Salesforce, I like to be like, yeah, we were the only two that were ahead of our time, was looking at integrating it into marketing, into the day-to-day, into all you're doing, because inclusive marketing incorporates not only the visuals, but the language, the data, the how you practice marketing. And to me, it's the right way to practice it. Not right because you have good values. Marketing is supposed to attract your audience, and your audience is diverse. So if you're not attracting the diversity of your audience, you're failing. And that was the lessons I was harping on about for about 5 years. And it would have little things where I would dive into stock photos, because a lot of social media managers would use stock photos, and they would type in search for a woman at a computer. You can't find a Black woman at a computer. Can't find a woman wearing a hijab at a computer because it just wasn't in the stock photo database. So there was biases within the tools we used as marketeers. And I had to teach people how to type in Black woman into a stock photo website to find an image. Like I had marketeers asking me, how do I find these images? And I'm like, you have to type the words.
So people are like, and I guess there's an internal bias or an uncomfortableness there of somebody having to type the word, like you said, black woman, almost like, oh, is that okay? Is that what I have to do? And it's like, yeah, is that not obvious?
For so many people, it really wasn't. And for various things, because they didn't have to think about something outside of themselves until they had to. And again, to me, that's not how marketing should be practiced. You're not meant to just create campaigns that appeal to you. They're meant to appeal to your target demographic, and your target demographic is diverse. And when I say diverse, I'm not just talking about race or gender, even in age. You look at a lot of campaigns, especially for older men, it's things around Viagra not being vital. That's not all older men. You know, there's some out there who are fit and sporty, and there's variety and diversity in your audience, and people are missing out on that.
So we talked a little bit about stock photos. I remember you did a campaign actually where you recreated a bunch of stock images that people could actually use. Tell us a bit about that.
Yes, I was building my first website when I just started the business, and I wanted a stock photo, super simple image. I wanted a stock photo of a pair of hands on a keyboard, because that's what you do as a social media manager. You're always on a keyboard. And I wanted those hands to be of a black woman. I could not find it. Like literally searched every free stock photography website. I did not have money at the time, because you just start a business. You don't have a budget. Couldn't find it. And I'm like, this is the most simple, generic thing that should be available to anyone of any skin tone. And partnered up with TechSpark. And we created our own photo shoot and created our own stock photo database of women in tech and people of color in tech doing various things that are generic. And some of those photos are still being used now. Like I saw one the other day of a woman in a hijab using the VR headset. These photos we created back in 2018, got featured on the BBC, millions of downloads, but it was of things that just weren't available at the time. Now we have AI to generate these things. They're not always the best in generating them, but it was needed. It was needed then, it still is needed now.
Especially, I guess, with AI, you might have like 7 fingers on the keyboard. So there's still a place for, that's probably why your images are still being used, because AI hasn't cracked it yet. But yeah, it's like I said, it sounds so simple, but you're obviously someone who solves problems. You're just solution focused. You're like, oh, hang on a second. Why isn't this working? Or why doesn't this exist? Okay, I'll just create it. And I think that takes a certain type of person. How do you think you've become that person who's like the solution problem solving person?
I think it's a mixture of I create problems as well, because I ask questions. I have this vivid memory of like my mum's friend when I was like 9 or something, and we had just come over from Trinidad. He got a new car and the radio system wasn't working. So I started like poking around and taking it apart in someone's brand new car. I didn't know how to put it back together. And I was like, okay, I'm going to figure it out. I'm just so curious that I think sometimes I ask questions that seem obvious to my brain, and then the solution also seems obvious to my brain. I describe the way I think a lot like cobwebs. So I'm dyslexic, I'm very visual. So when I start a conversation, sometimes I'm on the outside of the cobweb and the person's still in the center building out their thoughts. And I'm already like, oh, I see where you're going with that. You want to get to Cardiff. This is how you do it. And they're like, no. I want to get in a car. And I'm like, no, but you said car. You said you want to get in. Like, I'm already there. I'm in Cardiff waiting on you. And they're like, what? So I've learned to slow down my thinking, but because I see things as a cobweb, I always also see the multiple solutions and the multiple ways, and I'm running 1,000 miles an hour. So I create problems sometimes because I didn't let them finish their sentence. They said they want a car, not Cardiff. But then, yeah, the solution finding is always in there because I'm curious.
You said during COVID, you had a bit of time on your hands. You know, for some of us, not everybody, but the world kind of paused or stopped. I spent a lot of my time on furlough during that time, not doing very much. First time that I got a chance to stop. So for me, I was like, let me just breathe for 5 minutes. I felt very privileged. But some people went off and did a master's in data science. Tell us about that.
So I had to take the opportunity because the world stopped for me differently, because I have been self-employed for 10 years. And during COVID, was just before my speaking career was going off. A majority, I would say 80% of my income was coming from public speaking. So when that all stopped, I was like, oh, this thing could just go away. What happens? And I saw an opportunity to do a data science master's that was sponsored by the government, actually, for women and people of color. So I was like, yep, sign me up. I'm going to do it part-time. Going to dive into it. And I was able to get onto the program because I had previously done an experiment on Twitter at the time. And Twitter at the time, not now, I don't know what to say now.
Not now, at the time, Twitter, yeah, back then.
Back then, haven't been on the platform for years, but back then you would upload a photo and it would crop the photo. So a lot of people would do the experiments because they found out that that algorithm was quite biased and it would always crop to the man or crop to the white person. I did an experiment where I took all of the Fenty makeup models, Rihanna's Fenty makeup brand, who has over 40 shades, and I ran an experiment comparing which it would crop to. And in some cases, it just cropped to the white space in the middle. And I used that in my application for my master's of like, I want to figure out why this algorithm's doing that. I want to understand how this is built. This was before the large language models, before ChatGPT. This was the algorithm that decisions were made by a person on the data set and how it was created. And I wanted to figure that out.
And let me just pause you there. So what you're saying is it a photo of a black woman and it cropped to the white space rather than the black woman's face?
Yeah. So the experiment I did, I took a very long photograph and I put 2 women on either end of it. In theory, it should find a face and pick that face and prioritize. When people were doing the experiment with like Simpsons characters, it would crop to Homer and not Marge. When they were doing it with presidents, it would crop to the white president and not Barack Obama. So I wanted to know how it would crop in faces in relation to skin tones and shades of women, specifically black women. The algorithm did not crop to either of their faces. In the extreme cases, when it was an extremely dark skin tone and an extremely light skin tone, it would choose the lighter skin tone. But if it was too, let's say they were like 4 or 5 shades off, it just crops to the white in the middle.
So we're not even visible in that algorithm.
Mm-hmm. And I wanted to figure out why.
So you do the data science masters. What were some of your biggest takeaways?
Not to shade my course at the time, but ethics was not a module. So I had to figure that part out myself. The other part is a lot of the way data science is taught is more so asking questions of the data after. And I see the sector's evolving, you know, the roles are changing, people have their place and their things, but I feel like data scientists aren't given enough authority to question and just assume that the data they have is the data they have. And there was a lot of times in that course, again, going back to my curiosity, where I was like, oh yeah, this is amazing, but obviously this is biased because X, Y, and Z. And they're like, oh yeah, just use the NHS data set or just use the census data. I'm like, no, obviously that's not going to be a fair algorithm. And they're like, no, it's a data set that someone collected. Obviously it's fair. My takeaway from that is questioning the data. And that's been through and through all of my work, all of my things I look back on that time.
I think it's interesting. I think that's that thing that's prevalent across like academia. I remember doing an ILM sort of level 7 in coaching and leadership. And then all of the references for books were essentially written by white men a long time ago. And I was doing it, I was really excited. I was like, yeah, you know, growth mindset, learning, want to deepen my like knowledge in that space. And then when the reality struck me with the reading list, I was like, oh, is there not an expectation that we'll be reading texts written by people from other demographics? And it was sort of like, you can if you want to, but this is the stuff that we consider to be credible. And this is the stuff that you'll be expected to reference. But if you want to do additional reading, you can. And you already have like 100 books to read. And I was thinking, wow, for a leadership level qualification or certification for people of all different professions, there's no expectation that you will diversify where your knowledge set comes from. And I thought that was really interesting. And it sounds similar to the masters that you were doing.
Yeah, definitely. I think it worries me a lot in technology how we're not taught about the impact of the things we're making. A lot of it is on the tech and it is on the exciting part and learning the code and the practical and the logic, and it's appeasing if your mind likes to solve problems. But the things that we're making and building and contributing to has bigger societal impacts than we are taught.
Let's move on. Tell us about InClued AI.
InClued AI came about from that inclusive marketing aspect, and I built the first prototype in my master's program where looking at language, I don't know if you probably saw this, where there was a research paper someone did of the biased languages in job ads and how gender bias influenced who applied the language used in the words. So looking at that as an example of some words will encourage more men to apply, some words will encourage more women to apply. And these are not offensive words, these are just everyday words that we use like community and so forth. built InClued as an algorithm that will detect problematic words and give people a score on how inclusive or uninclusive the words are, and also apply context. So looking at words within recruitment. For example, the word rock star within recruitment is likely to reduce the amount of women applying because it's implied you want a rock star, you want a male, you want someone who's bold and loud. And that was used a lot in tech. But within marketing, if you're using the word rock star, you probably literally mean rock star. So it was taking a lot of the inclusive language that was taught by the DEI diversity, equity, inclusion consultants and applying the marketing context of like, okay, what does this actually mean? And is this offensive in that case? And how does it impact the audience? InClued is currently in beta. People can sign up and use it and put their text in there. We're now pivoting to look at building multiple suites of inclusive tools so people could have things that help them improve how they're using AI. Because when we first started building InClude, it was more so helping people improve their own writing. Now it's helping people to spot the biases within the AI text that they're generating. One of the tools that we're working on at the moment is to write inclusive alt text. Alt text is the text that describes an image for someone who's visually impaired, but it's also the text that's used to describe an image to AI. So we're building a tool to write inclusive alt text because a lot of alt text description doesn't mention things like skin tone, hair texture, body size. Now, if AI is using alt text to understand how bodies, humans, and everything looks, if we're missing out those elements, we're teaching AI to erase those people.
So let's break that down. And thinking about your earlier reference with the photo where you've got the two Black women and a blank space in the middle, and the algorithm at the time was centering on the white space in the middle, that if there was an alternative text that was written to explain that image, it may not even see the two Black women. It might explain, it might center on the white space.
Yeah. So it might focus on describing the image as long image with potential people. How alt text is written is such an art, and a lot of people are using AI to write alt text now. Obviously, I am not visually impaired, so I do not specifically have a full understanding of the benefits to pros and the cons of using it in my day-to-day, but it's fascinating to see those within the visually impaired community, how they use alt text and how they add more story to the picture, add more context. And then you look at AI generated alt text and you're like, oh, it said their human is here. Or the picture consists 3 people and it's like, no, these are 3 people in love. Or these are, there's layers that AI wouldn't necessarily write for alt text. And also there's layers that someone might prompt away if they get AI to write it. They might say, just focus on the fact that there's a man in front of the room rather than he's addressing a room of women and, he's a guest and the women are in power. There's different contexts that AI just can't understand and we need to apply. So we're looking to build tools to help that.
And I think as well, even if we look at that sort of the stereotypes or just like the presumed genders of people that AI probably recognizes in terms of what does a man, or a male look like versus what does a woman or a female look like. And it may not even be picking up on the detail to even describe the picture correct in the first place. Let's just press pause a second. I wanted to take us back a step. So for people that are kind of listening in and they're like, this is so interesting, I don't really understand the AI still. I kind of know what it does, but I'm not really sure. People may not understand beta, what that means. So let's just break down a few of the terms so that we can keep people with us. First of all, what is AI at its core? Explain it to us.
First of all, it's been around a long time. Don't let anyone tell you it's brand new. At its core, it is taking a bunch of, let's say, words, putting it into a room and training it to predict the next word. So I like to describe AI tools, especially the ones we're talking about, like puppies. Imagine you get a puppy and it's been really well trained to sit on the word sit. But the way AI models work is that they're predicting it. So if I say the puppy's going to assume I'm going to say sit, but I could be saying cipher or whatever. But the AI is picking up and predicting the next word. So it's not necessarily intelligent, like the name of it implies. It's not thinking, it's predicting. That puppy is really good at predicting your next want or need or how to put an output that makes you, the individual user, really happy. However, it's been trained by someone else. So someone else might train that puppy to really dislike plants. And you wouldn't know that until you bring it to your house and it starts to tune up all your plants. This is some of the things where bias comes into these AI models because we don't know how it's been trained. and we don't know what information's been given, and we don't find out until we start using and engaging with it. The other element of puppies, once you engage with it and you're building that puppy to like you and like your house, and you take it outside and it starts barking at everyone else, is also similar ways to where AI models are trained. It's not necessarily understanding how it's going to impact other people. So the biases in there could have negative impacts for others, but positive impacts for you. So on a core level, artificial intelligence is training a computer to predict the next thing that would most likely lead after a sentence. So if I was to say sand, it would predict which, but I can be saying sand castle, sand, I don't know that many words that start with sand. It's just predicting the next thing. It's not necessarily thinking. And the reason it feels like that is because it has a lot of data. Think of how long we've been on the internet. But in that as well, a lot of the internet is used for not great things. A lot of the internet isn't accessed by everyone. A lot of content isn't written by everyone. So that's why it leans a certain way. The other way you can see one of these biases, if you've ever used ChatGPT or Copilot or any of these tools and you get it to write something and it's putting Z's in everywhere because you're wanting to write in British English, but it's writing in American English, that's a bias because it's been trained on more on American data.
And tell us about beta.
It's basically the tech way of saying don't have high expectations. We are, another tech term, bootstrapping. So essentially we're building without investment. It's just me and one other person, and we're coding and building it ourselves. That's all it is we're still testing. It's not the final version. It's not the main product. It's not something you can compare to Google search engine, for example.
And I think that's fun. I think like where we are, obviously we're in the housing sector and people could be, our listener could be from anywhere. But for people that are outside of our sector, you know, when we're trying out a new program or a new initiative, we're piloting, right? We're trying it out, you know, we'll run it for 6 weeks or we'll run it for, you know, the first time. And you know that you're running in it with the intention of just getting it out there, trying it, getting the feedback from either our tenants or getting the feedback from our colleagues or other people in the network to see what's working. And then you kind of go again. And I think everything is always in a pilot stage because you should always be growing something, evolving something. People change, time change, new tech comes along. You know, we didn't have as much access to the AI tools now as we did 5 years ago. So even, you know, roles should be evolving and changing consistently. So I personally am like, we're always evolving. Even if you think about it from like an iPhone perspective, it's like iPhone 17 now. It keeps evolving. It wasn't just made and that's it. So I'm similar. I'm sure that the program that you've got, it's beta stage. It's just part of that process. I think it's great. And I think people should definitely try it. What's something that we're not talking about when it comes to AI that genuinely keeps you awake at night?
Everything I speak about, the risks and the biases, and it keeps me awake at night. The example is I worry that maybe one day my mother or my future children will go into a doctor's office or go into an environment and literally will have a computer says no situation where the doctor says, no, you can't get this medication, or no, you can't do this thing. And they not know that they can challenge it and be like, challenge the computer. That worries me because those algorithms, those AI tools are biased. People being in situations where they don't know they can challenge and they don't know about the biases and they can't advocate for themselves continuously worries me.
What's something that we can do as users to keep people accountable that are creating these tools?
The other element is use the tools to challenge it. Use the tools to know where they fall and make sure you're always having that element of you are the human involved and advocating. I would say pick your tools wisely as well. Don't always go with the generic ones that are known or massively used. As users, we have spending power, we have decision power. We can help in terms of questioning how they're using water in the data centers. We can question these things. We might not individually be able to change and move these companies in a certain direction, but applying that feedback and applying that pressure individually builds a mass. And that's one of the things we can really push back. If you haven't tested out any European AI tools, there's LeChat by Mistral.
Oh, LeChat. That sounds great.
So go check it out. Don't feel tied down. And if you're using these tools for free as well, remember your data is how you're paying. So keep that in mind. You have power where you put your data.
And just while we're on that, what excites you about AI? What are some of the tools out there that are like, oh, try this, try that? Or what are you excited by?
I'm excited by, there's a thing of personality developing in the different models right now. Like I said, I use quite a few of them. So I use ChatGPT, Gemini, Copilot, Claude, LeChat, Notebook LM. There's some other ones I use a lot. But they're all developing their own ways. And what excites me now is seeing how they're specializing rather than trying to be the everything for everyone. Like, I'm really enjoying Canva and how Canva's implemented AI. Canva's a design software for people who do not know how to design. Designers use it as well, but they still probably would go to Adobe. But Canva has integrated AI that's really, really interesting, helping to make a problem that you specifically go to that platform for easier. Rather than having to think of the solution, it's like, oh, I want to make an image, it's going to help me do that. And another platform that's introduced AI is Notion, which is a project management platform. Big fan of it. It has access to your company data that you've put in there. And it means the AI agent that they've applied to it is super helpful because it already has the context. You don't need to give it more. I'm excited about where things are going. I'm excited about AI agents. So AI agents are AIs that have been given their own tools to go out and do things. So say you want an AI agent to book you a flight, it might need to call a travel agent on the phone. So it will be given the tool of having an automated voice and being able to respond to that. And they're developing quickly. People are using them in various ways. You can have specific agents. There are people now even talking about having companies run by one person and 50 AI agents doing different things. So you have an AI agent who does the social media posts, an AI agent who does the marketing, the accounting, individual jobs rather than one agent to do it all. Excited to see where that goes and how that builds. I don't think it's picked up in terms of enterprise and business yet, but a lot of people are talking about them.
And people that sit there and like, oh, is an agent going to take over my job? I hear that a lot. And for me, I'm just like, just get better at using tools. But do you see that as I guess in your world, do you see that as a genuine worry across more organizations? Or do you think people shouldn't be worried? It's just a natural evolution of any process in society when we develop more tools to help us.
It is a process. I think the worry more should be in the upskilling. And I keep comparing it to the age of the internet. If you are a person who refuses to use internet in your workplace right now, you probably will be fired. Like, this is unrealistic. We use it for so many things. So if you're refusing completely to use AI tools in your workplace, it might become a point where they don't use it because now the expectation for completing projects has changed. We're in a turbulent era of things shifting. So job roles will change and people may lose their jobs, but I don't think they're losing their jobs necessarily to AI. They're losing their jobs to corporate entities wanting to save money. And that's the thing that's happened throughout history and will continue to happen. If you're in a workplace and you're involved, get on that Copilot, get onto that Gemini, whatever your company approved tool is, learn how to use it, pick up those skills now, because no matter what happens, you're going to need that skill. So I don't think people should be afraid of it at all.
I think for me, it's kind of like, at a time people would have had an axe to cut down a tree and then maybe chainsaws, electric chainsaws came along. And it's kind of like, you might need less people because that takes less time because you've got, faster, more effective, more efficient kit, which comes with its own challenges and dangers, but that's there. I think I definitely agree. I definitely think people need to be almost excited and on board with upskilling across the organization, but also individually and putting themselves in the better position. I think back to just like video calls. I remember trying to get someone to have a meeting with me and we couldn't find a time to meet. And it was kind of a situation where we were both having to work together for a client. And so he was like, I can't do this time, can't do that time. And I was like, well, we're going back and forth, back and forth. And I was like, let's just meet on Zoom. And he was like, no, it's got to be face to face, got to be face to face, got to be face to face. And I was thinking, wow, like in this day and age, like if you're not prepared to have flexibility as required with meetings, sometimes it will be a meeting online because that's the most efficient, cost-effective time to do rather than in face-to-face. Sometimes it could be even because of a climate. You don't need to fly to Paris for the meeting. Do you know what I mean? You can just do it on Zoom. You're going to get left behind. And so I find it interesting, again, with thinking about AI tools. I feel like it should be rebranded. Using artificial predictions should be something that we need to really get on board with and understand how we do that. And I know it's difficult for our sector, especially because people worry about cybersecurity and things like data protection and all of that goes with it. But also it's here and it's embedded already. So how can we best use it?
And not using it is not the solution. it puts you more at vulnerability. Using it cautiously, confidently, and knowing that you can't trust it is a good position to be in, because then if you're not using it at all, you leave yourself vulnerable to risks. And those risks are unknown, they're wide open. You don't know if you're going to get a call one day and it's an AI agent because you haven't paid attention to what's going on. So you need to be aware. Shutting it off is not the goal. Something you mentioned just now that triggered my brain about the next stage of that problem you had of we had to meet in person, but you could meet over Zoom. The new version of that would be, oh, we don't even need to go back and forth. Our AI tools can do that and figure out a time for us to meet. But it still requires the human to make sure their calendar is up to date. So there's the human in the loop there of like, you have to make sure your calendar actually has the times. You can't just leave it wide open and have it in your head of, oh, I'm going to work on this day. You need to block out times, because the AI tool is going to pick a time when you're available and send it to that person.
It always comes back to us flawed human beings, like having to do certain things, like, and we think it can do everything for us, but it can't. I think there's something in there for me just around behavior change. So even when you have these tools and even when they're available, so for me, I like to use like a booking link and like, you know, my calendar's up today, I've got the booking link, all of that was about efficiency. But then you send it out to, you know, a stakeholder and they still email you back and say, how about this time? And I'm thinking, I've literally streamlined this whole process using the tools that are available to make it easy for all of us. But I'm still having to go back and forth because somebody else's norms can't change. And I think that's a challenge that we face at different parts in different parts of the sector and depend on who we engage with.
And those social changes are going to take time. They're going to take time. And going back to what I said around, we need to be confident in the element of we can question technology. As a human, I interact with another human, sometimes just being open to the fact they don't want to engage. I don't think they shouldn't engage in things, but it reminds me a little bit of the airport situation happening right now. A lot of airports are changing to facial recognition, and in their terms and conditions, so facial recognition is where they use your face, they scan it, put it into an algorithm and say this person matches their passport photo. But then they can take that data and use it for many other things. They can start trying to facial recognize you in a supermarket, out shopping, and say that you committed a crime because this face matches your face 80%. There's a lots of controversy around it. In the implementation of facial recognition in airports, you're supposed to have the option to opt out. And I've been flying a lot recently, as we mentioned, I went to New York and so forth. They don't make it very clear that you can, and they make it very awkward and uncomfortable if you do, because I do opt out. Mainly one, to see if they will allow me. Some airlines have not, which is like, you're violating my rights, okay?
But you still want to go on holiday, so I just want to get on the plane now.
I just want to get on the plane. I just want to get on the plane. So it's interesting that this element of culture change, but also where's your personal rights in it all, and finding that balance.
Let's circle back to the top of the show. You were at the UN doing this talk. Tell us, how did that land? How did that feel?
So it was honestly an amazing experience. It's probably a 4-year journey of meeting people around the world who are passionate about the future, passionate about representation. Before the UN and speaking in New York, I had the opportunity to speak to 200 women and girls and the Korean government around AI bias for 10 minutes in South Korea. And that's where I met Her Royal Highness Dr. Nazim, who had an amazing story and has done amazing things around health and empowering women and girls into science. And we spoke a little bit about AI and what I did. And then that's who invited me to speak and address the UN on the 11th year of the International Women and Girls Day of Science. Data science and AI is a science. Sometimes it doesn't always get classified as that. It sits more under tech. But it was really fascinating to hear what the states were doing around the ways to get more women and girls into technology, but also their concerns around AI. And I had the opportunity to present, yes, there are biases, but there are opportunities to change. And we're at a pivotal stage in society now where we still have access and still have control, and we can still make technologies and tools using these AI tools to better help and improve women and girls' access to things. So that was my approach, and fascinating to hear the amazing work other researchers, innovators, entrepreneurs are doing in the field and how they're trying to beneficially impact countries, get more women and girls into STEM. I still look back and think, wow, that happened.
I think it's amazing. And I think you've got something to share. And I think over the years, I've learned so much from you. I think you've had such a big impact with the work that you're doing. This has been really great speaking to you. Before we close out, what keeps you committed to doing this work?
I want to leave my grandchildren something I can be proud of, is the thing. That's that legacy, and being able to create a positive impact on the world is my driver at the end of the day. Human life. I sound like a robot there. But we have such short time on Earth, and I don't see the point of trying to make that time sad or negative in any way. So if I can do any type of change, if I can empower anyone, if I can even provide knowledge, and if I can keep learning too, it's not all altruistic. Some of it is selfish as well. I want to learn stuff, and I get to meet amazing people and learn amazing things from them. So that keeps me going too.
Joyann, it's been a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you so much for sharing some of your gems. We could keep talking for hours, but we're not going to do that. We're going to call it time there. Speak to you soon.
Thank you so much.
Our mutual interest is powered by Merthyr Valleys Homes.